On my way to my grandpa's while reading, a homeless man appeared with a chilling warning. Don't go there. Stay with me while I share my story, and if it makes you feel something, show your love by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with the people who matter to you. I froze for a moment when I heard his voice. He looked tired, with a ragged coat that seemed older than me, and his eyes carried a weight that made me feel like he knew something I didn't. Don't go there, he repeated softly, as if he was trying to save me from walking into danger. My heart skipped a beat. For a second, I thought about turning back, but then I shook my head. This was my grandfather's while reading. I had to be there. I thanked him quietly and walked past, though my chest felt heavy. The warning clung to me, whispering in the back of my mind. Why would a stranger say that? Why today of all days? But I couldn't let fear control me. My grandfather was the only one in my family who ever truly believed in me. Growing up, I was always treated like the outsider. My Uncle Darius, my Aunt Lorraine, and my cousin Kendall made sure I knew I was the poor relation, the one who didn't belong. They had money, privilege, and status, while I struggled just to get through college and keep the lights on. Every holiday, every visit, they would look at me with that same smug smile, as if I were a guest in my own bloodline. Grandpa was different. He would sneak me cookies in the kitchen when I was little, sit me on his knee, and tell me I was strong, even if the world tried to convince me otherwise. He'd whisper, "Don't let them break you, Aaliyah." Those words stayed with me, even now. Maybe that's why I couldn't let myself turn back when the homeless man warned me. Grandpa would have wanted me there. Still, as I walked closer to the mansion, the man's warning pressed harder against my chest. It wasn't just random. His tone had been urgent, almost desperate. Don't go there. I replayed it in my head again and again. What could possibly be waiting for me inside? I tried to shake it off. Maybe he was just confused or rambling like people on the street sometimes do. Maybe it had nothing to do with me. But deep down, something inside me whispered that this wasn't a coincidence. The sky above the mansion was gray, heavy with clouds, as if the world itself knew something dark was about to happen. My footsteps slowed at the front gate, and for the first time, I wondered if I was walking into more than just a will reading. Maybe I was stepping straight into the heart of betrayal. And still I pushed forward. The mansion stood tall at the end of a long driveway, its stone walls cold and unwelcoming. Even though I had been here before as a child, it always felt less like a home and more like a fortress. My grandfather's estate in South Carolina carried the kind of weight that pressed down on you as soon as you stepped through the gates. The place smelled of money, history, and secrets. I parked my small car between rows of luxury vehicles, feeling like an intruder already. Walking up the steps, I adjusted my coat, telling myself to stay calm. This was just a will reading. Nothing more. But the moment I pushed the heavy front door open, I felt every pair of eyes lock onto me. Uncle Darius was the first to greet me. His smile was wide, his voice warm, but his eyes were sharp like a blade. "Aaliyah," he said smoothly, drawing out my name as though it amused him. He had always been that way, charming on the outside, calculating on the inside. Aunt Lorraine floated over next, arms stretched for a hug. She smelled of perfume so strong it almost made me cough. "Oh, sweetheart, you made it," she said sweetly. But her grip around me was too tight, too rehearsed. I knew better than to believe the affection in her voice. Beneath her polished manners lived a bitterness that had never been hidden well enough. And then came Kendall, my cousin. He leaned against the stair railing like he owned the place, arms crossed, eyes filled with amusement. He didn't even pretend to be happy I was there. "Well, look who finally showed up," he muttered, smirking. Kendall had always been the golden boy, handsome, confident, spoiled. The world bent to him, and he expected everyone else to do the same. I forced myself to smile, though my stomach twisted. I didn't belong here, not in their world of polished shoes and expensive jewelry. My dress was simple, my shoes scuffed from too many long walks to work. I could almost hear their thoughts. She doesn't fit in, she never did. But then I remembered my grandfather. He had been the only one to look past appearances. He would slip money into my backpack when no one was watching, telling me, "Don't let them make you feel small." When my mother struggled, he helped us quietly, though he never admitted it openly in front of the family. Those small acts were the only reason I felt brave enough to stand in this room now. We gathered in the great hall, where portraits of ancestors stared down from gilded frames. A long table sat in the center, polished to a mirror shine. At the far end was Mr. Whitaker, my grandfather's lawyer, adjusting his glasses as he shuffled a stack of papers. The air grew heavy as he cleared his throat. No one spoke. Every breath seemed to echo against the high ceilings. I sat down, my heart racing, as the reading of the will began. Mr. Whitaker's voice was calm but firm as he began to read the will. Everyone leaned forward, eyes sharp, waiting for their share of my grandfather's fortune. My palms rested on my knees, damp with sweat, though I tried not to show it. I had no expectations, at least none that would put me above the others. He read through a few small details first, setting aside money for charities, some antiques for distant relatives. Everyone nodded politely, though I could feel the impatience building in the room. Uncle Darius tapped his fingers against the table. Aunt Lorraine pursed her lips, and Kendall scrolled through his phone as if the whole thing was beneath him. Then Mr. Whitaker paused, adjusted his glasses, and looked directly at me. "As for the primary heir," he said slowly, "Mr. Mercer leaves the majority of his estate, including the mansion, surrounding land, and controlling shares of Mercer Holdings, to his granddaughter, Aaliyah Mercer." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, and sharp intakes of breath bounced off the walls like thunder. I sat frozen, my mind blank. Did he just say my name? Uncle Darius's face darkened instantly, his jaw tightening as though he might crush his teeth into dust. Aunt Lorraine placed a hand on her chest, her voice breaking into a sharp gasp that was more anger than shock. And Kendall, he laughed under his breath, the sound dripping with disbelief, then leaned toward me and whispered, "You don't deserve it." His words stabbed into me like ice. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I wanted to ask if there had been a mistake. How could Grandpa leave everything to me? Out of everyone in the room, I was the one they all considered least worthy. The lawyer continued, his tone steady, but I couldn't hear half of what he said. My ears were buzzing. My chest was heavy. All I could think about was the warning from the homeless man. "Don't go there." The words echoed through my mind now, sharper, clearer. Was this what he meant? That my family would never forgive me for being chosen? The silence that followed was more dangerous than the gasps. Uncle Darius finally forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, congratulations, Aaliyah," he said slowly. Aunt Lorraine chimed in, her voice sweet as syrup. "Yes, dear, how wonderful for you." Kendall just leaned back, arms crossed, smirk plastered on his face like a threat. I managed a weak smile, but inside I was trembling. Their eyes weren't on me with love or even surprise anymore. They were sharp, cutting, filled with envy and rage. It felt like sitting at the center of a storm, the winds circling, waiting to tear me apart. In that moment, I knew the inheritance wasn't just a gift. It was a spark that had lit a fire, and the flames were already rising in their eyes. That night, the mansion felt colder than I remembered. After the will reading, I had thought about leaving and driving back to my small apartment, but Aunt Lorraine insisted it was tradition for the family to stay together after such an occasion. Her smile was soft, her tone gentle, but it was clear there wasn't really a choice. Everyone expected me to stay under their roof. I tried to settle into one of the guest rooms, but the silence of the place pressed against me. The hallways stretched long and dark, portraits of ancestors glaring down from the walls as if they disapproved of me being there. My bag sat by the bed unpacked, because I couldn't bring myself to act like I belonged. Somewhere past midnight, muffled voices carried through the vent in the wall. I froze, straining to listen. Uncle Darius's voice came first, sharp and filled with rage. It should have been mine. After all I've done for this family, he gives it all to her. His words cut the air. Aunt Lorraine's voice followed, dripping with venom though quiet enough that she must have thought no one could hear. "We can't let this stand, Darius. Everything went to her. Everything. She's not capable of handling it. She doesn't belong in this house, much less running the estate." My breath caught. I pressed my ear closer, my heart pounding. Darius lowered his voice, but I still caught the words. "We'll get her to sign papers. She doesn't know what she's doing. We'll make it sound like it's for the good of the family, and by the time she realizes, it'll all be ours again." The conversation ended with Lorraine sighing, a hiss of frustration. "She won't stand in our way. She's too soft." I pulled back from the wall, my stomach twisting. Their plan was clear. They wanted to take everything from me, and they would stop at nothing to get it. The next morning, Kendall appeared at my door, leaning casually against the frame. His usual smirk was softened into something that almost looked like kindness. "Rough night?" he asked, stepping into the room without waiting for me to invite him. "I'm fine," I said quickly, keeping my distance. He gave me a knowing look, lowering his voice as though he were sharing a secret. "Look, I know my parents can be intense, but But I'm not like them. I think you and I could actually get along. You don't have to feel alone here. His tone was smooth, practiced. He wanted me to believe he was on my side. But I saw through it. I remembered the sneer on his face during the will reading, the way he whispered that I didn't deserve any of this. His charm now was nothing but a mask. As he left, I felt the walls of the mansion closing in. What had once been my grandfather's safe haven was now a trap. Every smile around me carried poison. Every word was a warning. And for the first time, I truly felt unsafe. Breakfast in the mansion felt more like a performance than a meal. Aunt Lorraine sat across from me, her pearls catching the morning light as she stirred her tea with slow, delicate motions. Her voice was sweet, but her words were heavy. "Aaliyah, darling, you know your grandfather loved this family. He wanted the legacy to stay strong. Don't you think it would be better if the responsibility didn't fall only on your shoulders?" I looked down at my plate, pushing food around with my fork. She smiled at me warmly, as if she were guiding me, but the pressure beneath her tone was sharp. Legacy. Responsibility. Those words weren't about me, they were about control. Later that afternoon, Uncle Darius cornered me in the library. The fire was burning low, and the shadows made his tall frame look even more menacing. "You're young," he said matter-of-factly, "and I know things haven't been easy for you financially. Don't think I haven't noticed. This estate, these holdings, they're not for someone with no experience. You'll drown in it all." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Why not save yourself the struggle and let those who know what they're doing handle it?" I nodded stiffly, pretending to take his words in, but inside I was burning. They weren't trying to guide me, they were trying to break me down, to make me feel like I didn't belong. And the worst part was, a small voice in my head whispered they might be right. I thought of my bills stacked on the kitchen counter back at my apartment, the nights I'd eaten ramen because I couldn't afford better. Compared to the wealth and influence around me, I did look small. That night, exhaustion weighed on me as I closed my bedroom door. I just wanted sleep, but when I looked down, I froze. A folded piece of paper lay on the floor, pushed under the crack of the door. My hands trembled as I picked it up and unfolded it. The message was short, written in jagged black letters. "Leave before it's too late." My breath caught in my throat. I scanned the hallway, but it was empty, silent. I shut the door quickly, locking it, though I knew a simple lock wouldn't stop anyone here if they truly wanted to get in. I sat on the bed, clutching the note, my mind racing. Kendall's smug smirk flashed in my memory. He had been too quiet today, watching me from across the table like he was calculating something. Could it have been him? Or was it his parents, sending their threats in shadows instead of words? I didn't know who to trust. All I knew was that the warning outside the mansion echoed louder than ever in my head. "Don't go there." The homeless man's voice returned to me, haunting, protective, almost pleading. Maybe I should have listened. Dinner that night was served on a long, polished table, candles flickering in tall holders, casting shadows that seemed to stretch across the walls. The food was laid out beautifully, but I couldn't taste a single bite. From the moment I sat down, I knew something was different. Everyone's eyes were on me, not casual glances, but sharp, waiting stares. Halfway through the meal, Uncle Darius set his fork down with a heavy clink. "Aaliyah," he said, his voice smooth but firm, "we need to talk about responsibility. This estate, it's too much for one person, especially someone without experience." Aunt Lorraine leaned in, her smile painted on like a mask. "We've actually taken the liberty of preparing some papers. Nothing complicated, dear. Just agreements to share management, to keep the family balanced." Kendall slid a folder across the table toward me, his grin smug. "All you have to do is sign. Easy." My stomach tightened. I opened the folder, scanning the words, though I barely understood the legal jargon. Still, the intent was clear. They wanted control. My name was printed at the bottom line, waiting for my signature. "I'm not signing this," I said finally, my voice quiet but steady. The silence that followed was thick. Then, in an instant, Uncle Darius slammed his fist against the table, making the dishes rattle. His face twisted with rage. "Ungrateful," he shouted. "Do you think you earned any of this? You were nothing before this will, nothing. And this is how you repay us? By stealing what rightfully belongs to the family?" His voice echoed through the hall, sharp as a knife. I sat frozen, gripping the folder, my heart pounding. Aunt Lorraine reached for his arm, whispering for him to calm down, but her eyes never left me, cold, calculating. Kendall leaned back, smirking, as though enjoying the scene. I excused myself as soon as I could, retreating to my room, but the air didn't feel safe anymore. Every creak of the floorboards outside my door made me flinch. Exhaustion pulled at me, and I drank from the glass of water left by the bedside. The taste was strange, bitter, but I was too tired to care. My eyelids grew heavy, the world spinning into black. When I woke, everything was wrong. The room was darker, the curtains drawn, and the door locked. Panic surged through me. I rattled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. My head throbbed, my limbs weak. Something had been in that drink. Muffled voices drifted from outside the door. Uncle Darius's voice was low but furious. "We'll take care of it tonight." My blood turned cold. They didn't just want the papers signed, they wanted me gone. Completely. I backed away from the door, my chest heaving, terror rooting me in place. The mansion wasn't just hostile anymore. It was a cage. And I was the prey. The window was my only chance. My hands shook as I picked up the heavy lamp from the nightstand, raising it above my head. With all the strength I had left, I slammed it against the glass. The sharp crack split the silence, and shards scattered across the floor. My heart pounded. If they hadn't heard me yet, they would soon. I didn't think about the danger. I didn't think about the cuts on my arms as I climbed through the broken frame. I just knew I had to get out. My bare feet hit the damp grass outside, the cold night air wrapping around me like a warning. Every step was frantic, every breath loud in my ears. The mansion loomed behind me, its windows glowing faintly like watchful eyes. I ran without knowing where I was going, only that I needed distance. Branches scratched my arms as I stumbled into the trees, the earth uneven beneath my feet. My lungs burned, but fear pushed me forward. Then, out of the shadows, a figure stepped into my path. My heart leapt into my throat, but when the light from the moon hit his face, I recognized him. The homeless man. He stood calmly, almost as if he had been waiting for me. "You came," he said quietly, his voice steady. I froze, struggling to catch my breath. "Why are you here?" My words came out shaky. He studied me with eyes that carried a kind of sadness I couldn't place. "Because I knew you'd need help. Your grandfather would have wanted someone to protect you." Confusion clouded my mind. "You knew him?" He nodded slowly. "Name's Elijah Carter. I worked for him for years in the business. I kept the books, checked the numbers. Until one day, I found things that weren't right, money moving where it shouldn't. Deals being made behind your grandfather's back. And when I brought it to him, Darius made sure I was gone. Fired me. Took everything I had. I ended up out here." His voice was low but heavy with truth. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering. "So you've been watching them all this time?" "I've been watching him," Elijah corrected. "Your uncle is dangerous, Aaliyah. He ruined your father's life years ago, and now he wants to do the same to you. He'll smile while he does it, but underneath, he'll destroy everything that belongs to you, just like he did with your father." The words hit me like a blow. My father, broken, distant, always weighed down by something he never spoke about. Suddenly, it made sense. The pieces fit together in a way I had never understood before. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wasn't safe, but for the first time since arriving at the mansion, I wasn't completely alone. Elijah stood there in the dark, a stranger with nothing left to lose, and somehow I knew he was telling the truth. And deep down I realized I was going to need him. The night air was still, heavy with the smell of wet grass. I sat on a fallen log, my knees pulled close to my chest, while Elijah crouched beside me. His face looked tired, lined with years of struggle, but his eyes were sharp. He didn't waste time with small talk. "There's something you need to know," he said quietly. "Your grandfather's death. I don't believe it was natural." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "He was old, he'd been sick." Elijah shook his head firmly. "No. He was weak, yes, but not dying. Not the way it happened. I overheard things, Aaliyah. I saw Darius slip money to the nurse more than once. And one night, when I was sleeping out back near the garage, I heard them whispering about changing his medications. Too much of one thing, not enough of another." My breath caught, a chill running down my spine. The image of my grandfather's last days flooded back. The way his health had seemed to drop so suddenly, almost overnight. At the time, I thought it was just the way life worked. But now, with Elijah's words, it twisted into something darker. "You're saying," my voice shook, "you're saying they killed him?" Elijah's silence was answer enough. Tears blurred my vision as I pressed my hands to my face. My grandfather had been the only person who truly loved me, who believed in me. And now to think his death might not have been fate, but betrayal, murder, was unbearable. Elijah placed a small worn folder on my lap. I kept these. Your grandfather trusted me with them before Darius forced me out. They're records, proof of money being moved illegally, land transferred into fake names. Fraud. Theft. All done under your uncle's watch. My fingers shook as I opened the folder. The pages inside were yellowed, filled with numbers, signatures, and notes. At first they looked meaningless, but Elijah guided me. See here? That's money meant for company investments. It was funneled into accounts your uncle controlled. And here, land bought in the company's name, but transferred to a private shell corporation. Each page felt like a punch to the chest. My family, the people who looked me in the eye every day, had been building their empire on lies. Elijah leaned closer, his voice low. Your grandfather knew. That's why he left everything to you. He couldn't trust anyone else. He knew you were the only one who could stand against them. That inheritance, it's not just property, Aaliyah. It's a shield. It's a weapon. I sat there in the dark, clutching the folder, my tears drying into something hotter, sharper. For the first time, the weight of the inheritance made sense. My grandfather hadn't chosen me by chance. He had chosen me to fight. And whether I felt ready or not, I understood. I had no other choice. The next morning, I stood at the gates of the mansion again, but this time, I wasn't alone. Mr. Whitaker, my grandfather's lawyer, walked at my side, and behind us came 2 uniformed police officers. Elijah lingered just a step back, his worn coat pulled tight against his shoulders, his expression unreadable. My hands clenched the folder of documents he had given me. Inside, the family was waiting. They didn't expect what was about to happen. Uncle Darius was seated at the head of the table, sipping coffee like a king on his throne. Aunt Lorraine fluttered about with her fake sweetness, and Kendall lounged nearby, his phone in hand, smirking like always. Back so soon? Darius asked smoothly, setting down his cup. Have you come to your senses about those papers? I took a deep breath, forcing strength into my voice. No, I came to tell you the truth. I laid the folder on the table and pushed it toward him. I know what you've done. The fraud, the theft. And worse, I know what you did to Grandpa. Lorraine gasped, but it was the kind of gasp you give when caught, not when shocked. Darius's face hardened instantly. He laughed, but the sound was hollow. Ridiculous. Lies. Do you think anyone here would believe the word of a... Stop. Mr. Whitaker's voice cut through the room as he adjusted his glasses. I've reviewed the documents. The transfers, the signatures, the shell companies. It all traces back to you, Darius. And the police have seen it too. The officers stepped forward, their hands resting near their belts. Elijah's voice, rough but steady, carried across the room. And I saw you. I heard you with that nurse, paying her off. I heard you talk about changing Mr. Mercer's medication. You wanted him weak enough not to fight back. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in Darius's eyes. Lorraine reached for his arm, her face pale, but he shoved her hand away. He's nothing but a washed-up drunk. Darius shouted, pointing at Elijah. And then Kendall ruined everything. His voice rose above the chaos, his words rushed and panicked. This wasn't supposed to go this far. We just wanted her to sign the papers, Dad. The room fell silent. His slip hung in the air like smoke. He realized too late what he'd admitted. The officers didn't hesitate. They stepped forward, snapping handcuffs onto Darius's wrists as he cursed and fought. Lorraine sobbed, insisting she was innocent, but she was cuffed too. The charges rolled off the officer's tongue: fraud, attempted harm, possible involvement in Mr. Mercer's death. Kendall bolted, shoving past me and sprinting out the door. I heard the tires of his car screech against the driveway. One of the officers spoke into his radio, calm and certain. We'll get him. He won't run far. I stood there trembling, the folder still in my hands, watching as the family who had tried to destroy me was finally led away. For once, I wasn't the outsider. I was the one standing in the light, while their empire crumbled into dust. The mansion felt different now. The heavy silence that once carried threats and whispers of betrayal had lifted, replaced by something steadier, almost peaceful. Weeks had passed since the arrests, and after countless meetings with Mr. Whitaker, the estate was officially mine, legally locked in place, untouchable. For the first time, I didn't feel like an intruder walking its halls. Standing in the grand foyer, sunlight pouring through the tall windows, I thought of my grandfather. He had loved this place, not for its wealth or grandeur, but because it carried his life's work. Selling it would have been easier, a way to leave behind the ghosts of what had happened here. But no, this wasn't just a house. It was his legacy, and now it was mine to protect. I chose to restore it. Every broken shutter, every cracked tile, every peeling wall would be mended, not as a monument to greed, but as a tribute to the man who believed in me when no one else did. Elijah shuffled into the room behind me, carrying a small box of his belongings. He still wore the same frayed coat, though I had offered to buy him new clothes more than once. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice cautious. "Yes," I said firmly. "This house is too big for one person. And you've been loyal to my grandfather long before I even knew. You belong here, Elijah. This will be your home too." His eyes glistened, and for a moment he couldn't find the words. "Finally," he whispered, "he'd be proud of you." Those words settled deep in my chest. I remembered the warning Elijah had given me that first night: don't go there. At the time, it felt like nonsense, the ramblings of a man on the street. Now I knew it had saved my life. If I had ignored his voice completely, I might not be standing here at all. Out in the garden, workers had already begun repairs. The roses were being revived, the fountain scrubbed of moss, the walls power-washed until the stone gleamed. Life was coming back to this place, just as I was finding life again in myself. I thought of Uncle Darius, Aunt Lorraine, and Kendall. They had wanted me erased, reduced to nothing so they could fatten themselves on greed. Instead, their masks had been ripped away in front of everyone. They weren't victims of injustice. They were architects of their own downfall. Their betrayal didn't ruin me, it revealed them. For years, I had been the poor relative, the one who didn't belong, the one they whispered about. But now I carried something greater than wealth. I carried justice. I walked to the window, looking out at the land my grandfather once walked with pride. My reflection stared back at me, steadier than ever before. "They tried to destroy me," I whispered, "but they only destroyed themselves." And in that moment, I made a vow. Betrayal would never define me again. This inheritance was not just land or money. It was truth, it was survival, it was the justice my grandfather had entrusted me to uphold. Do you believe Aaliyah made the right choice by keeping her grandfather's estate and turning it into a symbol of justice? Or should she have walked away and started fresh somewhere else? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear your take. And if you like stories filled with twists, betrayal, and revenge, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss what's coming next.